Hello everyone, it's DJ again. Welcome to part 4 of Military Divorce Minefields. This is going to be the shortest and simplest of 4 episodes, so I'll congratulate you on surviving to this point. And don't worry, it's all downhill now. This is the easy stuff. And there's not even going to be a whole lot of math. In fact, none. No math at all. I'll give a couple of form numbers, but that's the closest thing to math you're going to have. So rejoice, right? Alright, so the last topic I'm going to cover in this series is the survivor benefit plan. This plan provides a monthly survivor annuity of 55% of retired pay or less if a smaller amount is covered upon the death of the retiree. Here is a quick and radically simplified explanation of how it works, at least on the divorce side of things. Unlike retired pay, this is not something that can be divided. Elections under the survivor benefit plan are categorical. That's my term for it. That's not the legal term for it. And that means that you can only choose a certain type of beneficiary, such as a spouse or a former spouse. Coverage for a former spouse is not an automatic thing. Like I said, this is a categorical election. So if you had your survivor benefit election as spouse right now, and you put your spouse's name, then if you got divorced, who's the beneficiary? The beneficiary is spouse, because it's categorical. Now you don't have a spouse. So this isn't like life insurance where putting someone's name on a form under a certain category means they get any sort of benefit at all. So if a former spouse is going to get a survivor benefit annuity, then they have to be listed as former spouse. And a different sort of election needs to be made. Now, service members can be required to cover a former spouse under the survivor benefit plan, or they can voluntarily choose to do so. That's entirely on them. Now, if that choice is made voluntarily, then I would recommend putting that decision in writing and having that document certified by the court. That only makes things easier later on. Excuse me. Now, if you're going to make a survivor benefit election for a former spouse, how do you do it? Well, normally when you're making a change to a survivor benefit election, you use what's called a DD Form 2656-6. But we don't know, or I don't know, your situation. So it might be that you need some other document. But here's the most common. So let's say that you are making a change to your current election. Then you need DD 2656-6. If you're making the former spouse your beneficiary, you also need DD 2656-1 and a copy of the divorce decree. And if you have a separate document authorizing or stating that the former spouse is to be the beneficiary, then include that as well. Just keep it simple. The big thing to remember, though, is you have to make this change or this initial election within 1 year of the divorce. Otherwise, your previous election stands and you cannot change it. And of course, you might also be facing contempt of court charges if you don't follow through. Now, of course, on the federal level, they could care less. This is a state matter. But if you want things done right, do it within a year, preferably a lot less, and save yourself a lot of heartache. Now, believe it or not, when it comes to making a former spouse a beneficiary for the survivor benefit plan, both parties can do this. In the case of the service member, they have 1 year from the date of divorce. In the case of the former spouse, if there is a separate court document like a qualified domestic relations order, which shouldn't be used in this case, or a military pension division order, then the former spouse has 1 year from the date of that document to do what's called deeming the election. And the former spouse does this by, of course, filing a form, which is DD Form 2656-10, filing that form and the document that authorizes making the former spouse a beneficiary with the service member's pay center. And I might as well just put the addresses of all the pay centers in the show notes since I keep talking about sending stuff to them. So I'll go ahead and do that. But if the service member is choosing to cover the spouse or the coverage is mandated by the courts, either way, the change needs to be registered with the pay center and preferably in a timely manner. Now, here's where things get a little weird. Some divorce decrees and other documents state that the service member is responsible for paying all of the survivor benefit premiums, and some of them state that the premiums are to be divided between both parties. Either way, it's an erroneous statement. We're getting back into what I mentioned in episode 1 of this series of civilian attorneys using civilian terminology to describe what is really a military affair. There's no way to divide the survivor benefit premiums. Excuse me. In episode 2 of this series for dividing retired pay, I talked about the disposable retired pay and how that's calculated, and what is taken out of gross pay to leave disposable pay. Well, what comes out are taxes, survivor benefit premiums, other deductions that need to go to the government, things of that nature. So there's no way to divide what's already been deducted. So since there's no way to divide them, that might as well just be left out of any court document. And if by chance you're a lawyer, please make a mental note of that. And if you would like to read up on the law for the survivor benefit plan, it's enormous. And even I, who am quite familiar with it, find it a little bit, getting a little bit intimidating. All right, so back to business here. If the service member, the retired service member, has remarried and currently has the former spouse listed as a beneficiary under the survivor benefit plan, what does he do? Well, he's already got an election. But if later on in life the former spouse passes away and the retiree has another spouse, then just like any other change to the SBP, the retiree has 1 year from the date of the passing of the former spouse to change his survivor benefit coverage over to his current spouse. This can be done with DD Form 2656-6 and a copy of the former spouse's death certificate. Pretty easy. Just a quick note on a survivor benefit change. The DD 2656-6, like any government form, looks terrifying. But when you actually go line by line, it's really nothing at all. Don't be, like so many service members seem to be, afraid of a blank space on a form. A blank does not always mean that you have to put something there. In fact, just this morning, I received an email from one of the local National Guard armories with a survivor benefit change in it. Some poor gentleman lost his wife recently. And he did the survivor benefit change himself. He was trying to be proactive, but he was clearly, not reading instructions, and maybe he was overcome by grief. Who knows? But the entire change was erroneous. If I sent it to DFAS, they would just reject it because it was done wrong. He did several things that invalidated the change. So please, when you're making these elections, read instructions carefully. Making a check in one area or filling in a name in another can have a detrimental effect on what you're trying to do. In fact, I recommend get a survivor benefit counselor or a retirement services officer to walk you through these changes so that you can be sure it's being done correctly. All right, enough of that. So in closing, let me just say that by no means have I covered all of the topics involved in a military divorce case. There's just too much out there. If I tried to cover everything, then I might as well say over the next year we're going to cover divorces. And even then I probably wouldn't get it all. So please take a look at the links that I have in the references section for more information. They can help you go this way or that way or whatever and find the information you need. But these 4 short little episodes are certainly not everything you possibly ever want to know in the whole universe ever about military divorces. I would recommend talking with a military lawyer about all of the other options that might be available to you, because I'm certainly not one. But I have put a link to a military one-source search tool that can help you find a Judge Advocate General or JAG office in your area. Please make use of that and get the information you need. What I'm doing here is just a quick intro. They're the ones that can give you all of the in-depth knowledge that you really need if you're going through one of these divorces yourself. So, as always, I ask that you share this information with others out there who you think can benefit from it. The more people know, the better decisions they can make, and hopefully the better their lives can be. So if you're on YouTube, then please come over here. I keep pointing in the wrong direction. Come over here and click that little RC retirement icon. That will subscribe you to this channel. If you're listening to me in podcast form, then please subscribe if you haven't already, and go to iTunes and write a quick review of what you hear. Let others know what you think. If you are going to visit my website, which is now working, thank goodness. It turned out there was a bad plug-in that was slowing things down, and just turning that off fixed everything. So the load times are now perfectly normal, and you can take use of a new device there. On the left-hand side of the site, you'll find a SpeakPipe widget, which will allow you to leave up to 3 minutes of a voice message to me, and I'll get it as an email attachment. So please make sure your microphone works when you do this, by the way. I won't be there to say, you're all broken up, I can't understand you. So check your microphone first, just to be sure. But you can leave comments for me that way, in addition to comments on the podcast, comments on the YouTube channel, etc. So, as always, I thank you for being part of this audience, and for being with me as we grow this thing. Thank you for your service, and of course, have a great day. Come see me next week. Goodbye.